Hello and welcome to another episode of the Buckle Bomb Show here at Bomb Media Productions. My name is Bobby. I am so happy to be here to talk professional wrestling with you once again. I am joined, as always, by my broadcast partner, Anthony Roan. Tony, how you doing, buddy? Possibly. I hope not, to be honest with you. I think we all do. All right. You know, I almost didn't want to do the show this week. There's not a whole lot going on in the wrestling world. Not a whole lot to talk about. Why even bother doing the show? No, not really. I guess we'll just go through the shows like we normally do. Oh, wait a minute. There's probably one thing we should talk about before. No, that was pretty funny, though. That was pretty funny. I did see that. Why wouldn't you have a fire extinguisher if you're going to do a fire spot? That makes no sense. But yeah, no. But there was something I think we need to talk about before we get into our show reviews. I think it has something to do with the women's tag team championship, if I'm not mistaken. Oh yeah. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Of course, I'm sure you've heard by now, Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out at Raw. There's a whole lot going into this situation. Not sure what to believe. We're a whole week in now, pretty much, or at least 6 days in. And it's still a lot of rumor and innuendo, and then the WWE statement, and that's all we have. We'll run through it. We'll go where we think things might be headed into the future. So we'll start with the WWE's official statement that they put out right after Raw. And let me flip over to it here. They say when Sasha and Naomi arrived at the arena this afternoon, they were informed of their participation in the main event of Monday Night's Raw. During the broadcast, they walked into Head of Talent Relations John Laurinaitis' office with their suitcases in hand, placed their tag team championship belts on the desk, and walked out. They claimed they weren't respected enough as tag team champions, and even though they had 8 hours to rehearse and construct their match, they claimed they were uncomfortable in the ring with two of their opponents, even though they've had matches with those individuals in the past with no consequence. Monday Night Raw is a scripted live TV show whose characters are expected to perform the requirements of their contract. We regret we were unable to deliver as advertised tonight's main event. All right, we'll stop. We'll pause right here. And what are your first thoughts of this statement with WWE? Yeah, it's... A lot of people found it odd that they released this statement. I was right away, was a bit more, obviously they're going to release a statement. It's been, there's a whole lot going on. They've been through this recently, the Jeff Hardy situation, the Tony Storm situation. They wanted to get out in front of this. They wanted to put their spin on it. Okay, now that I got your video back up and I actually can concentrate on what's going on. I was trying to fix your video. They're obviously trying to get out in front of the story, get their version of events out there first. Obviously, if you read this, there's an undercurrent of anger here too. Like, they're not just putting out a statement. They're whoever wrote this, and I think I sent you a joke because they used the word belts. Their championship belts, which, that's a right, exactly. But, whoever wrote this obviously was someone who was a little butthurt too. So, I don't think it was like I joked that it was a PR person, and maybe it was, but this definitely sounds like it was an actual official, whether it be one of the producers who was, working with Sasha Naomi here, or John Laurinaitis, or Bruce Pritchard himself. Who knows who wrote this statement? It does have a little bit of an undercurrent of anger, and certainly they're pushing that they were in the wrong and they were unprofessional. Go ahead. Sure. I mean, anytime this walkout happens, and it's happened many times, WWE always takes the position of, they're a contracted performer. At the end of the day, they're supposed to do what we tell them to do on screen. They're playing a character. They are, it's no different than any other TV. They're just an actor. That's the way WWE looks at it. Of course, there are very big differences in between that, but that's WWE's always been their public point of view, at the very least. When Stone Cold walked out, they publicly trashed him back in 2003. Very publicly. They had Vince went out on screen and trashed him. Rock went out and trashed him. They trashed him in every form of media that they had. The WWE Raw magazine had articles about how unprofessional Stone Cold was for walking out. Obviously, those things got fixed. We're still in the first week of this here. Obviously, feelings are hurt. And we'll go ahead and move on here to the next little bit of thing. The next thing to come out was a Twitter thread from and here, I'll have it up on the screen, from Adidas Head 88, who is reportedly a friend of Naomi's. Naomi does follow this Twitter account. But whether or not they're friends has been verified. To this guy's credit, he hasn't been. He's obviously going to be getting a lot of interview requests and stuff like that. He hasn't bitten on any of that, and he has said, it's been reported that this is Sasha Naomi's statement through this guy, and that he's like, no, I got permission to create this thread with the information that I knew, but I am not speaking for anybody. I'm not speaking for Sasha. I'm certainly not speaking for Naomi. And his Twitter feed has been quite interesting since this night. But we'll go through what he said here the night of. He said, I guess speaking sort of from their point of view, you are approached in February as being put in a tag team after being promised big feuds at WrestleMania. You bite the bullet and put everything you got into being a tag team. It works, you get over, you win the titles at WrestleMania and become merch pushers. 5 weeks into your reign, you show up to live TV and ready to work. You're told you'll be in the main event. You're happy. You both are then told that one of you will be going over from pinning the other. You have questions why that decision was made and how it helps y'all. You requested a meeting with your boss to discuss it. Your boss takes the meeting and everything is actually going well. He understands your concerns. The meeting ends and the match is told to be reconstructed. For some reason, producers get mad about it. You then ask one of your members going over what happens to your titles. You then ask with one of your members going over what happens to your titles. That's bad wording there, but okay. You're told basically that you will just be carrying the belts. They want to use you both to help both women's champions get more over. Bianca versus Naomi, Sasha versus Ronda. Neither one of you will win the solo titles, and you won't defend your tag titles until Money in the Bank. You ask for another meeting with your boss, but this time you're being called spoiled. Our producer walks away screaming. He comes back and tells both of you to fix your attitudes. Y'all have a brief meeting amongst yourselves and decide to stand up for yourselves. You go to another boss and make it clear you just have concerns. You ask, why are we even in the match? Why aren't other women in it? You ask why your titles have no stories for 2 months. Again, you're met with fix your attitude. So after one final meeting with yourselves and asking others, you make the ultimate decision as a team. It's sad how one side is trying to create a fucked up narrative. Also, it was asked why Nikki ASH and Doudrop in the match instead of starting their program tonight. Naomi nor Sasha talked down about being in the ring with either one. I don't know how that got flipped. All right, so your thoughts on this thread, assuming it's accurate from their side. Yeah. Mm. Sure, but to interrupt you right there, one of the big differences, like we're talking about, hey, an actor signs on to do a movie, they got to do the script that they're told at the end of the day. One of the big differences, SAG, Screen Actors Guild, they have a union. They have representation that can fight for them and make sure they're getting treated fairly and all this stuff. So there's still very much a difference there. But go ahead and continue. Certainly, at least WWE wrestlers or performers, if not all wrestlers, because there are advantages to being a a the phrase is not coming to my head right now, but there are advantages to being a contracted performer versus being an employee. You can go work for other companies. AEW, you can still work the independent scene if you're signed with AEW. You can still work, with Impact and with NWA. You can still float around, go to Japan and all that. As long as you're making your dates for AEW, you can still do these other things. WWE's like, nope, you're working for us. You're not working for anything else. You're not doing anything else. You can't even have your own OnlyFans or your own other forms of income without our permission and without our branding and without us taking some of the money from it. So, obviously, at the very least, maybe not all wrestlers, but WWE performers, I would say, do need a union. Yeah. I don't know that it's 100% Vince McMahon, but certainly at the top of that company, there's still very much an old school wrestling philosophy where, they'll punish a wrestler for doing things that they deem, wrong. They're still like old school territory bullshit wrestling ideas that they do that AEW does not, that Impact does not hold to anymore. Wrestling's moved on from that, and as much as I like old school wrestling, that's some of the positive things of where wrestling has been moving towards, and WWE is stuck in the past. They're still stuck, in the 90s at the very latest, I think, with some of the way they do things behind the scenes. Getting back to Sasha and Naomi here, one of the things I think that is interesting is that it's come out for both of them that their contracts are up pretty soon here. Now, there's an interesting wrinkle. Like, I think it was reported Naomi's is up in 2 months. Sasha doesn't have much longer left on her contract. Now, there is a wrinkle here that not a lot of people have talked about, and obviously they have officially suspended them indefinitely. But with these WWE contracts, and I can't say for sure, I don't know Sasha's and Naomi's contract, but typically there's a clause in there, and we've seen it with Rey Mysterio. He got injured, so his contract was basically paused. And until he showed back up on TV and came back from his injury, his contract did not continue the rest of the 6 months he had left or whatever. So, sure, Naomi has 2 months left on her contract, but WWE could say, no, you're still under contract with us. You're not currently fulfilling the rest of your contract, so we're pausing that contract. You're suspended. When you come back, that 2 months can continue, and then we can talk about, an extension or whatever we're doing after that point, or, a release or whatever the case may be. But, I see them being stuck here for a while. It's going to be a lot longer than 2 months before we see Naomi on TV again, or Sasha, assuming things don't get fixed relationship-wise between the two sides here. Yeah. There are a lot of people that thought that was a work. Yeah. Um, and I've got this video up from SmackDown that WWE tweeted where they talk about where Michael Cole announces the suspension and the tournament for the next WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. So let's talk about the future of the Tag Team Championship for a little bit. First off, I love Pat McAfee's face here. He's obviously not jibing with what's being said, but and Michael Cole, to his credit here, is just saying the words he has to say and then moving on. And I think we have to be careful here when we're discussing Michael Cole or Corey Graves here. And, remember that especially Corey Graves on Raw, when he was talking about it, he didn't know the situation. He was live doing commentary when they walked out. So he's being told that, say they're unprofessional. He's just going along with it. He doesn't know what the actual reason was. Jimmy Smith was talking about on his podcast that he just assumed that one of them pulled a hammy or something while warming up. He didn't know they had actually walked out. So you got to be really careful when putting the hammer down on commentators and people speaking on screen for the WWE, and not give them too much flack for that. Though Pat McAfee's side eye here is fantastic. But what do you think that they've announced this tournament? And a lot of the thing online was like, with what tag teams? And I saw a great tweet that said, "This is the WWE Women's Tag Team bracket," and it was one line below that, and then they joined together into one other line. So it was literally a 2-team tournament, or excuse me, I guess a 4-team tournament. Excuse me. So it was. Go ahead. That's great. Usually Vince. Yeah. All right, yeah. You brought up before. I want to talk about where we go with the tag team championship here, like you said, and you brought up before that hey, there was a time when we had some women's tag teams back in 2006, 2007, but that was at a time when there was one, typically one women's segment on a show, and it went maybe 7 minutes, entrances included. And so they were just throwing in a bunch of women. So it made sense to have tag teams so that you got more women on the show. Now that you have a legitimate, taken seriously women's division, you do want to, and you have women taking up. And I'm going to pause the recording real quick. We're having an issue here. I'll be right back. And we are back. I apologize about that. I lost internet. Spectrum sucks. I'm switching to Frontier soon. All right. As I was saying, the WWE's women's tag team division, they've got a lot of fantastic women and women that would make great tag teams with each other. They've got, you mentioned NXT. They've got some female tag teams down there. They've got they tend, as WWE does with tag teams, regardless of gender, they tend to just throw teams together, stars together, and here you go, make it work for a short period of time. And they never usually commit to those teams long term. And that's what you have right now with the women's tag team division. You've got Sasha and Naomi were a team that were thrown together. They committed to them a little bit, but it really has only been a few months since they were put together and won the tag team titles at 5 weeks ago at WrestleMania. You had who did they win the titles from? It was Zelina Vega and Carmella, right? So they're a random team thrown together. You've got Shayna Baszler and Natty Neidhart, random team thrown together. There's no actual tag teams that WWE has committed to. RK Bro has worked, random pairing there, but it's worked because they've committed to that team and they've been together for over a year, and look at where they're at now. They don't do that. They do that here and there with the men's tag team division. They've never really done that with the female tag team division. You've had a couple. You've had the Iconics. You had they committed for a little while with Asuka and Io Shirai, but they never commit long term with any tag team. They could have a robust female tag team division if they were to commit to some tag teams, but it's always let's move things around, let's break things up, let's put these two together, let's break these two up. Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley could have been a huge tag team. Now, Rhea Ripley's on the bigger and better things, sure. And I like right now, I'm happy to see that they're putting Liv Morgan in with this Judgment Day and AJ Styles and Finn Balor storyline that we'll be talking about later on. But, as far as a tag team division, you never commit to having any tag teams together and to having an actual division. It's just filler on TV. And I think this is just more indicative of that. You have the tag team champions. They're just belt holders on TV that, hey, we can use they're champions. They're over. People know who they are. They're stars. We can get them over. We can use them to put over our world champions until it's time to get them on, to their next feud. So I am firmly on Team Sasha and Naomi here, and also when it comes to the attitude, which in the WWE statement is very clear that hey, they had an attitude. I wonder if that would have been said about two male stars walking out. Sure. Yeah, yeah, sure. But CM Punk, or excuse me, Shawn Michaels would get so much leeway, and so did CM Punk as well. They were in the back. They were in the back, addressing their concerns, and getting told, "Hey, lose the attitude. All right, you guys have an attitude." Certainly, you can debate whether or not that would have been said with a male or whether it has been said before with other walkouts. But certainly, at least from an outsider perspective, it doesn't look great when we're telling that to two women of color. I don't know about that. I don't know that there's not no double standard there. Because I don't know that it's happened like this. No, absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah, at least no one's been willing to really put up a fight on those contracts. I would wonder if because when you enter those contracts, you want to be there. You want to be a WWE superstar. You've wrestled your whole life to get to that point, and you at that point you're kind of willing to eat whatever shit you have to stay on the team. So yeah, and that's why you need a union. Um, all right. All right, we've talked about this for 34 minutes now. I think we can go ahead and move on to the rest of our show. We're going to go ahead and discuss everything that happened in this week in wrestling TV, specifically with the WWE and AEW. I've got some detailed notes here. I'm going to bring my other laptop over, and we'll go ahead and start with Raw. And mind you, I made my notes for Raw and SmackDown off of the Hulu versions, so I'm also going to have my the WWE Raw results up here on WWE.com. And I already know the second match is a match that I was expecting to see the participant in that I didn't see, but we'll get there. So we started off with a video package for Omos and Bobby Lashley, which they're always good at, and then we cut to the announcers who did a rundown of the matches for the night. This is, of course, when they first announced the six-pack challenge that would end up not being the main event. And then we went right into the steel cage match of Bobby Lashley versus Omos. We would start off, MVP would have a promo in the ring. When Lashley made his entrance after MVP's promo, he would get attacked from behind by Cedric Alexander. Omos would leave the cage to join in this beatdown at the rampway, but Bobby Lashley would get away and get into the cage with Omos looking on from outside the cage, and that's where we cut to a commercial break. We come back. We're all in the cage now, and the bell rings to start the match. Back and forth to start it. MVP uses his cane as a weapon through the cage. I liked that wrinkle. Lashley trying to escape a few times, but at one point Cedric Alexander stopped him from escaping from over the top. Cedric pays for that by being thrown from the top of the cage into the ring. Omos would then grab Bobby Lashley, throw him around, throw him into one side of the cage, and then throw him into the other side of the cage. And he would go through the cage, land on the outside, and eventually get both feet on the floor for the escape win. I did like that the ring announcer would say, despite the unique way this has happened, both feet hit the ground. And I'm like, yeah, very, very unique. They haven't done this a million times at all. What did you think of this steel cage match to open Raw? Yeah, I love MVP as a heel manager for sure, and we'll see where it goes with Omos. Obviously, they're putting a lot into Omos and building him up right now, but I'm not sold on him. Right now he's got size. He's not great Khali terrible, but he's got some speed and some movement, but not a whole lot. We'll see what they do with him. I mean, he's still green as hell. Certainly, I think the best thing for Omos is having MVP by his side right now. No doubt about that. All right, we will move on from there, and this was not on the Hulu cut. Veer Mahan would defeat Mustafa Ali, so I did not see this match at all. The Miz was the special guest referee. All right. So Mustafa Ali thought he was finally going to get his hands on Theory, but the U.S. champion had a surprise in mind, with The Miz once again serving as guest official. Theory tabbed the ferocious Veer Mahan to do battle with Ali. After a flurry of offense left the Lion on Monday Night Raw wounded on the outside, Ali was set to take flight until the A-list official blocked his takeoff and threw him to the ground to allow Veer to lock in the cervical clutch. As Theory and The Miz took a painful group selfie, the Mysterios came in to make the save and stand up to Veer Mahan. What'd you think about this segment? I didn't see any of it. That's what it says, right? Am I reading that wrong? Cervical clutch? Well, he's a heel. I don't have any problem with that necessarily. To me, this was more about the Ali Theory storyline and Miz and everything that's going on here. You got some sympathy for Ali. I think that was the intent. And then you have the Mysterios come in to make the save. So I get what you're saying with Veer, but a win is a win, and I don't think he comes out of this looking less than, in my opinion. There are moments he's still a little over the top for but he's a good heel. He's not over the top in the Seth Rollins fucking terrible way, but it's still a little too much for me. But it works well. And he's just kind of will do whatever WWE needs him to do. He's sort of the model WWE citizen in that way. We'll go ahead and move on to the next match. We had Riddle. There was a backstage segment. We'll start there with between Becky Lynch and Adam Pearce. Of course, this is one of the segments that was filmed on the fly after the whole Sasha Naomi situation. Becky was talking to Adam Pearce. She would say, hey, I just saw Naomi and Sasha take their bags and leave. This match can't happen tonight. You should just make me the number one contender. And of course, Adam Pearce would go, no. I already know what's happened. I've got the new main event set up. It's going to be you versus Asuka for the number one contender in the main event. We would move on. Anything you want to say about these Becky Lynch Adam Pearce segment? That was a quick fill-in. Well, Becky Lynch is one of their biggest stars. Putting her in that segment and putting her in the main event, they already had a little thing going with her and Asuka. It was a quick pivot, something they could do really quick, that they felt, hey, we can't give them this six-pack challenge. The way WWE and Vince McMahon thinks, whatever happened with Sasha and Naomi, that happened. All right, we got to quickly pivot here. While we're on the air, we got to figure out something new. We'll go to something even better. It'll be a one-on-one match between Becky and Asuka. We got to go set that up. Let's film a little thing with Adam Pearce. I got no problem with that, despite whatever issues and heat Becky Lynch may have with other women in the back. That'll lead us into our next match, Riddle versus Jimmy Uso, of course, with Jay coming out. Pretty decent little match here, decent little TV match. We would go into at one point, Jimmy would be up on the top turnbuckle. He would be caught by Riddle, who would attempt a super RKO. Riddle will get pushed down. Jimmy goes for the Uso splash, but Riddle gets his knees up. Riddle would crawl to the opposite corner, gets up. Jimmy runs at him, but Riddle would hit him with an elbow. Riddle climbs up to the top rope, but Jay interferes with him. Riddle falls off the top turnbuckle and is then rolled up by Jimmy. Jay tries to help with the pin, but the referee catches Jay, tosses Jay out, and while all this is going on, Riddle would roll up Jay for the pin-up victory. What do you think of this match? Mm-hmm. When they finally break up 5 years from now, you're gonna go, see, I told all of you. Well, I think right now, I don't think they're going to necessarily break them up anytime soon. They're one of the hottest acts on TV. You can continue this feud a little bit longer with the Usos and the Bloodline and get a couple of repeat matches out of it. And obviously on the house show run. But you've got, I think RK Bro is also one of the biggest merch sellers right now. Especially with that 420 shirt. So, I don't know that you're going to break them up anytime soon. I don't think it'll be until. I think it'll be closer to WrestleMania, and then you get to a Randy Orton Riddle match at Mania. I don't think it'll. I think we'll stick with them through the summer. I hope. Yeah. All right. And this was just one of a few roll-up pins that we had on this show, if I'm not mistaken. All right, just a few. Uh, then we would have a backstage segment earlier today with Liv Morgan being interviewed, and that interview would be interrupted by Los Lotharios, who wanted to invite her to be a part of the Kiss Cam. Who wouldn't, but she was a little creeped out by them. Liv would be rescued from that by AJ Styles and Finn Balor. They want Liv to join them in the fight against Judgment Day and to come out with them for their match against Los Lotharios that night. Then we would also cut to a backstage Judgment Day promo with Edge on his throne, flanked by Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley. Priest would talk first, and then Rhea would get a few words in, and then finally Edge. He would invite all angry people into his movement. That could even be AJ. He's smart. He's intelligent. He's a leader. He could be a big part of Judgment Day. That would lead us into a match. AJ Styles and Finn Balor with Liv Morgan backing them up versus Los Lotharios. Los Lotharios would get heat on AJ. AJ gets a tag. They work together in sending Angel and Humberto out of the ring, and then a stereo over the top cross body to cut to commercial break. We come back from the break, and they're back to getting heat on AJ in the ring. That builds up to the hot tag to Finn. Finn clears house, gets offense in until he's cut off by Angel with a knee, who then runs over and attacks AJ on the apron. Angel goes for the wing clipper, but Finn reverses to a sling blade. Super kick by Angel. Gets the tag to Humberto. Humberto goes to the top turnbuckle. Moonsault right into Finn Balor's feet. Was a heck of a spot there. And then a phenomenal forearm to Angel while Finn gets the coup de grace on Humberto for the win. What'd you think of this match? Yeah. 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 Yeah, agreed with them. That would lead us into our next match. It would be a rematch from last week. Alexa Bliss with new music, kind of a cross between her OG music that she came out to last week and her creepier music that she's been using lately. Um, this was a more competitive match than last week. Still not terribly long though. Sonya would try to expose the turnbuckle, but would get caught by the referee mid pulling of the tie. The referee has his back turned to the action, trying to tie the turnbuckle back on. And Sony would hit a spine buster and pin Alexa and seemingly be able to cover for the three, but the referee would be late getting there as he's tying up the turnbuckle. Alexa would kick out. Then Alexa would end up hitting a DDT for the win here on Sonya. After the match, Sonya would blame the referee and slap him in the face. I think we'll see some sort of fallout from that. What do you think of this match? Yeah. And a fantastic heel. No, no, no. That's censored. Nope. No, I think where they're headed with Sonya, she will go on a little bit of a string here. I don't know if she's going to continue this with Alexa Bliss. If this is going to end up being a bit of a feud where she's going to have a receipt for Alexa somehow, some way. She gets back at her and gets a win over her or something, and that'll lead into a few return matches and maybe a small feud here, where hopefully Alexa does go over as she should, but Sonya can keep some heat, which I think is what this accomplished here. Alexa got the win, though it certainly didn't make Sonya look weak at all, and then she kept her heat afterwards with the slap in the referee's face. I like this. Yeah, I liked it for what it was. You're right. That's a good way of putting it. All right, we'll move on from here. And again, another thing that was not on my Hulu cut of Raw. Ezekiel would defeat Chad Gable. A failed attempt at a DNA test didn't lead to Kevin Owens' long sought after exposure of Ezekiel's true identity. This next sentence doesn't even make sense to me. Otis's rib obsession contaminated the sample. Oh, like eating ribs and it can. Okay, all right. Right. But Chad Gable tried to right those wrongs. Gable got rolling during the match, but a reverse cradle allowed Ezekiel to continue his befuddlement of KO and Alpha Academy. So was this much of a match at all? No. All right. After that, we would have, or maybe before that, I don't know exactly the timing of things, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, they would play a video package of everything that has happened, specifically last week. Cody Rhodes would come out in his suit, and then they would cut the commercial break. They'd come back. He'd cut a promo, and I really like this promo. He'd say that he would say that last week Seth told him after his beatdown of Cody that Cody will never take anything from him again. Cody wants to know exactly what did Cody take from Seth. Cody takes us down memory lane back to 2012 when Seth arrived in WWE. Quote, and I would remember, I was one of the bitter boys in the locker room. Within a few years, Seth climbed the ladder and won the world championship. Quote, Seth Rollins won his way to the top. My story is a little different. I didn't win. No, I didn't win that much until recently. Actually, I lost. I scratched, I clawed, I painted my face with a smile dead inside, looking up at the lights most nights. But the thing is, I endured. Cody would go on to say he learned from losing, learned how to reinvent himself. The number one thing that I learned, I'm never going to be the American dream, so why not embrace the nightmare? Cody says this is a chance for vindication. This is his second chance, and if Seth wants to take that from him, quote, you're going to have to kill me, and I'm going to give you the chance. Cody challenges Seth to a Hell in a Cell match. Then Seth's fucking stupid, over-the-top laugh would ring out in the building, and he would appear on the Tron, seemingly from backstage, even though he's not there. And he would cut a little bit of a decent promo. Seth's a good promo, despite this bullshit gimmick that he's running with. And he would accept the challenge for a Hell in a Cell match. So what do you think of this promo from Cody? And what do you think of the Hell in a Cell match? Yeah, I think this will obviously be the blow off, and I think Cody goes 3-0 here. I don't see any reason for them to not do that. But they've done a good job because Cody's up 2-0, and they've done a good job to get 3 matches, even though Cody's going to probably win all 3 of them. And I love this promo from Cody. For a second at the beginning, I thought, oh, this is going to be one of Cody's. He's going to drone on a little bit. This is going to be one of his. Sometimes I have issues with some of his promos, but this turned out to be a really strong one. I really enjoyed this. And then that would lead into a backstage interview with Asuka. She would call Becky a crybaby and says she'll give Becky something to cry about. Then Bianca Belair would make an entrance as we go to commercial break. Bianca was looking hot. Asuka, we come back for break. Asuka and Becky Lynch match would get going here with Bianca Belair watching from ringside. Excuse me. Hot start to the match. Lots of back and forth. We'd end up outside the ring. Asuka runs at Becky, but is caught and thrown into the barricade as we go to commercial break. We come back from break with the action back in the ring. Asuka with a backslide, kick out. Asuka with a roll up and a kick out. Then Asuka hits a kick to the face of Becky. Both down selling, trading blows. Asuka comes out on top. She would hit a knee to the face and then float behind her to hit a German on Asuka. And then a German by Asuka. And then that would lead into a running knee on a Becky getting back up onto her knees, and that would lead into a pin and a near fall. Both slowly get up to their feet. Asuka, not being too discreet here as they're getting up on their feet with an obvious call in Becky's ear. Becky flips Asuka over into a pin with a kick out. Asuka goes for a hip bump, but Becky moves, and Asuka ends up trapped in the ropes. Becky on the top turnbuckle with a leg drop down to the back of her head. Another near fall. A few counter pins, and that would lead into an Asuka lock. But Becky gets Asuka's shoulders down for a pin, so Asuka would have to break the lock. Becky would end up on the top turnbuckle and would jump at Asuka, but misses a moving Asuka. Becky rolls through. And Asuka runs at her and gets Becky into a roll-through armbar. Becky would reach the ropes with her leg for the rope break. Becky would then drape Asuka with the rope stunner. Becky out at ringside would antagonize Bianca while Asuka sells, and this is sort of leading into the go home bit here. Asuka rolls out of the ring and attacks Becky from behind. Becky turns things around and throws Asuka into Bianca. Becky gets Asuka back in the ring and gets back into Bianca's face as Bianca's getting up. Bianca got angry, would chase Becky. Becky gets into the ring, but Bianca would be stopped on the apron by the referee. While the referee was distracted with Bianca, Becky would grab Asuka's fan that she uses during her entrance and attempt to use that as a weapon on Asuka, but Asuka would hit the mist spray on Becky Lynch, and then a kick to the face and would get the pin for the win. Asuka is your number one contender for the Raw Women's Championship at the Hell in a Cell premium live event. What did you think of this fantastic, in my opinion, main event of Raw? Mm. True, but you got to keep it closed. You're using it for a weapon, yeah. But it was a great spot. I liked the finish. I liked the match as a whole. From what you're saying about maybe WWE gave them this time. To be fair, they had the show timed out, and then this thing happened where suddenly the 6-pack challenge, where you have 6 women in the ring, probably each having their moment to shine and getting a couple of minutes here, suddenly is now just 2 wrestlers. You're still retiming most of the show, but for the most part, things are kind of locked in. The show's already going on. So that time that would have been given to all 6 of them now got to go to just a one-on-one match. And I'm sure Becky and Asuka, aside from anything going on with coworkers that they may or may not be with and supportive of, we're like, hey, now we've got this opportunity to put on a hell of a show. And they certainly did. And they put together a heck of a match on the fly, I'm sure. I'm sure most of this was called in the ring. As I said, I saw Asuka doing a pretty obvious call, but That's going to happen sometimes, especially with the WWE camera angles. They get zoomed in pretty quick. Um, but for being likely called in the ring with probably nothing but the finish really being locked in ahead of time, I thought this was a heck of a match. It does. Obviously, it took a few that they were planning with Becky and Asuka, and they were probably going to have a match at Hell in a Cell. Now we have to have Asuka in the world title match. What does that mean for Becky going forward? We'll have to see here. I know they're advertising for next week's Raw. What's Becky's reaction to losing to Asuka? So we'll see where they go with Becky from here, one of their biggest stars. All right. Any last words on Raw? Yeah. Especially with all the issues behind the scenes where they had to retime the show and, you know, some. Well, that's one of the things about being a creative is when you're under pressure and there are limitations set on you, all of a sudden you tend to actually come up with your best stuff in those times, and that match certainly was very good, along with some of the other stuff. I would say SmackDown we're talking about here. I was thinking, man, didn't SmackDown used to be the wrestling show? And I think there were only 3 or 4 matches, and 2 of them were squashes. So we'll go ahead and start talking about that right now. And our SmackDown review. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. And but and to WWE's credit, they committed to the bar. They saw the bar was getting over, and they committed to it. Obviously, Sasha and Naomi here, I don't think they're committed to any of these women's tag teams. But that's going backwards to previous topics we've already talked about. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to SmackDown here. Obviously, the big main event would be the unification of the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Championships. We would start SmackDown off with a video package about that unification match, and then the Bloodline would come out to the ring. Roman would say tonight is a special night because tonight you don't only acknowledge me, you acknowledge my cousins, the Usos, which means tonight you acknowledge the Blood Man. Wise man, tell them why. Paul Heyman would go on to say this is the greatest night in the history of tag team wrestling. I knew you'd get a kick out of that. Roman is the GOAT. Are the Usos the GOAT of tag teams? They are the descendants of Afa and Sika, the Wild Samoans. They are the GOATs. How do you become greater than that legacy? You do something they never did. You unify the tag team titles. The Usos have to earn theirs. He puts over RK Bro. Says they may be the best Raw tag team ever. But he says the Usos have to earn their spot. It's not enough to just be the cousins of the tribal chief. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, the Usos will come home the undisputed tag team champions, or they won't come home to the island of relevancy at all. Roman would go on to say he expects the Usos to deliver. He has those high expectations because he loves them, and he would give the Usos a hug in the ring. What did you think of this opening segment here? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. After that, we would see Sami Zayn backstage cheering on the Bloodline with a Bloodline shirt on, watching the monitor there. Then we would have Shinsuke Nakamura make an entrance as he passes by the Bloodline as they're headed to the back, and we go to a commercial break. And then we would come back from break. We would have Sami Zayn make his entrance, and we'd have a Shinsuke Nakamura Sami Zayn match. Sami would be wearing his Bloodline shirt for the match. Um, Pat McAfee, I love this little bit here. Pat McAfee would bring up an interview he had on his show with a U.S. senator about UFOs that he had on his show this week, and Pat says Shinsuke might be an alien, which of course he meant extraterrestrial alien. But Michael Cole had to jump in and say, I know you mean that in the best ways and not an illegal alien. He had to cover for him there. Shinsuke caught Sami on the top rope, attempted to superplex, but Sami cuts him off. Shinsuke catches Sami on the top turnbuckle again, who falls to the mat. Shinsuke goes for the Kinshasa, but Sami avoids it. Sami runs into a Shinsuke elbow in the corner. Shinsuke sits up on the top turnbuckle and attempts to kick Sami in the face, but he would get caught and throw Shinsuke out of the ring, and we would cut to commercial break from there. Another outside of the ring to commercial spot, as we always get. When we come back from the break, Sami would be on top. He would get Shinsuke into a sleeper. Sami pushes Shinsuke off into the ropes and back and forth from the ropes like 4 or 5 different times until Shinsuke would hit a jumping ninja kick onto Sami. Then you had a move that Michael Cole called Vintage Nakamura, which was a move in the ropes. Then you had a knee to the back of the head for a near fall. Sami avoids another Kinshasa. They would get outside of the ring, and Sami would hit a Michinoku driver in Shinsuke, and then he would run into the ring. Shinsuke would just barely beat the count out. Sami would get frustrated, get back outside of the ring to try and throw Shinsuke into the timekeeper's area, but Shinsuke would reverse it. Sami goes tumbling into the timekeeper's area, Shinsuke back in the ring. This time, Sami just barely beats the count out, but as soon as he gets into the ring, Shinsuke would hit him with the Kinshasa and a pin for the 3 count. What do you think of this match between Shinsuke Nakamura and Sami Zayn? Best match of the night, other than perhaps the main event. Yeah. All right, we'll move on here. We'll have Pat and Michael Cole will throw to a video package of the Usos, the longest reigning tag team champions. And I would write down here, Happy Corbin entrance. Yay, another happy talk after the commercial. Woohoo! We come back for break. Corbin is standing ringside next to the Andre Memorial Battle Royal trophy. He says he's the happiest he's ever been. He's got an expensive hat, an expensive watch, and best of all, he has ridded WWE of Madcap Moss. And he got a souvenir. They show the highlight from last week. Corbin's down in the ring. Says he got fined a lot of money for what he did to Madcap last week. But that's a lot of money for other people. He's got plenty. It was worth it. In fact, let's watch it again. And they would show the replay of him having the chair around Madcap Moss's neck and slamming the trophy down into it. He says Moss was his deputy, but that he was that he provided everything for him. He ate Wagyu beef and Corbin paid for it. Now, if he wants a steak, his nurse has to chew it for him first. I like that line. Corbin says Moss disrespected him and called him the big bad wolf. Cue fan chanting that. But Corbin would take that on. He'd say, well, maybe he is the big bald wolf because he huffed and he puffed and he put Madcap Moss in an ambulance. Corbin then would destroy the trophy, shattering against the ring steps. Cole would put over the trophy here, though, in his attempt to sell how disrespectful this is to the trophy by saying, it has been so important jump-starting the careers of so many here in WWE. Which just made me laugh because it's so not true. What did you think of this segment? I thought it was a good promo. Uh, I mean, I sent you that report. There is a report. We can talk about it here. That they, right now they got him in this injury angle with Madcap Moss, and they might bring him back with a bit of a gimmick change. And I think you and I both hope that that's the case. Yeah, yeah. It, I will disagree with you on this. Just because whenever Madcap Moss comes back, he's got to get his revenge. He's the babyface. He's got to get his revenge. Whatever changes he makes to himself as a character, he's got to get over. He's got to make himself whole and get over on Baron Corbin. I think that's, and then you move on. But I do think you have to continue this storyline up through Madcap Moss getting his revenge. All right. We will move on from there. Gunther would make his entrance, being introduced by Ludwig Kaiser. We cut to a commercial break. And that would lead to a really, really quick match between Gunther and Drew Gulak. The match would be already underway when we would come back from commercial break. Gunther would be in control with some nasty knife edge chops. And then he would hit a big power bomb and pin Drew Gulak for the win. After the match, Gunther would put Gulak in the Boston Crab, and Ricochet would come out to make the save on his buddy, Drew Gulak. What do you think of this match and the afterbirth here with Ricochet? And a lot of that is on the network, by the way, or on Peacock. So go check that out if you haven't. Yeah. Do you think they get Kaiser in the ring, or is he going to continue? Because right now he's kind of in a manager role almost. Do you think Ludwig Kaiser gets in the ring a bit more, or do you think they keep him more as a manager and he as a bumping manager? He can get in there, take bumps, but he's not pushed as a wrestler. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I think they're doing that. Um, What'd you think of Ricochet making the save on Gulak here and getting involved in the everything going on here? You think they're gonna just feed their Intercontinental Champion to Gunther? Mm-hmm. What do you what? Go ahead. Well, what if they put that title on Gunther? They obviously believe in Gunther, and they've got the machine behind Gunther. Throw the title on him, it might make something of it. Well, again, you've got one world champion right now. So they're going to have to increase the relevancy of both the US and the IC titles here. They have to. Because they're going to be main eventing house shows. Because you got, your A and your B show, you got your SmackDown tour, your Raw tour, and if world champion's only going to be on one of those, and of course there are these rumors that maybe uh, Roman Reigns is going to be paring down his dates, so he might not even be making a lot of the house shows. So it's going to be Cody Rhodes main eventing, as there's been a thing on Twitter because people have seen the house show results for the last 6 weeks or whatever, and it's Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins for like 20 matches in a row, and people were like, look at them not treating Cody Rhodes right. He's just wrestling Seth Rollins every single night. I'm like, that's what you do. They're on a house show run. That's what you do. They're on a house show tour. That's okay. Oh. Well, sure, but sometimes it's not even just that though. It's that this is the match that's selling tickets. A house show is there to sell tickets. That's it. So this is a big match, and you take that match and you tour it around. And it's probably going to be more or less the same match everywhere, every city you go in. There might be some small variances and differences depending on the town they're in, and maybe Seth Rollins is a little more babyface in this town, so they change things up a little bit. But more or less, it's going to be the same match that they tore around, and it's derivative of the territory days. But yeah, so that's people not knowing wrestling and understanding what wrestling is and used to be. But back to the IC title here. Yeah, I certainly it's been a disappointing run with Ricochet. He's barely been on TV, much less having a whole lot of defenses. I don't think there's, since we made that Heat Seeker, there's been a single premium event defense. But yeah, but put it on Gunther. But we put it on Gunther, and I think you'll see it more on TV, and I think you'll see get it defended more, because right now the machine is behind Gunther. All right, we'll go ahead and move on from that. Let's see what I had here. All right, I don't think this was on my Hulu feed. RK Bro explained their advantage over the Usos. No, I think it was, but I think it came. Maybe I just didn't write it down. But I know we would go backstage to Adam Pearce, and he's approached by. Yeah, see, we're moving forward, so it's not on here. Adam Pearce would be approached by the dapper Max Dupree. He's ready to get his work. He's ready to get to work. He's the CEO of the hottest new modeling agency, Maximum Male Models. He's looking for WWE superstars who can headline Paris Fashion Week as well as WrestleMania. Him and his agency were hired by Sonya Deville. Adam informed Max that Sonya has been relieved of her duties, and due to the circumstances surrounding that, this probably won't work out. But Max said he and his agency have a signed contract. What do you think of this, Max Dupree? Uh-oh. Hey, maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he doesn't want to take as many bumps. But yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. I'll hold off judgment until I see what happens with it. We would go backstage to a Kayla Braxton interview. Okay, that's where we had the RK Bro. Riddle would say he's confident. Randy thinks that the Usos are nervous. They're going to have to face Roman Reigns without their titles. Then we would have a video highlight package of Raquel Rodriguez and Ronda from last week. At Gorilla Position, We would come back to Shotzi and Aliyah arguing over who should have actually taken the spot in that match with Ronda. Raquel would step in, and Shotzi would diss Raquel Rodriguez, calling her soft and a choker. 6 feet of disappointment. And the absurd Amazon. I like some of the shots that Shotzi took at Raquel there. Shotzi's going to show her in the ring right now. Raquel would say, "Estás muerta?" In other words, would say, "She's dead. You're dead." And heads through the curtain as her music plays. So we would have Raquel Rodriguez versus Shotzi Blackheart, or excuse me, just Shotzi. Raquel would overpower Shotzi through much of the match. Shotzi would get a few comebacks in, but she would continually be cut off by an overpowering Raquel. Shotzi would go for a Hurricane Rana from the top rope, but Raquel, showing off her strength once again, would catch her and then throw her up into and carry her and get her into a follow-away slam. Excuse me. Some more back and forth before Raquel would hit her finisher, the Chingona Bomb, for the pin and the victory. It was interesting here on my Hulu feed and apparently on the Fox broadcast. Anytime Cole and Pat said Chingona, they bleeped it out. They censored it. So I'm like, what? And I didn't know the word. I didn't know what are they saying here. So I went looking for it, and I couldn't find anything online. I went to the YouTube video of the match, and it wasn't censored there. Chingona Bomb. Okay, so let me look up this word. Apparently, it's modern Latina slang for a badass or a badass woman, but it's used to kind of be a slur. It's got kind of a complicated history that way. It was a chingon is a male. It was a good word to describe a male as, but if you're calling a female that a chingona, that was she was masculine. She was not feminine. She was it was a slur. But it's in the same way other words and other slurs things have happened. They took that word and made it their own, and now it just means a badass woman. But obviously a censor at Fox knew the slur and wanted to censor it. But even here on WWE.com, they're still calling it the Chingona Bomb. So we'll see what happens with that word going forward on Fox. I think it's a great name for a move. It would depend on the Latina community, whether or not that's acceptable or not. It's not for me to say. And I don't know whether or not Fox or WWE would want to invite any sort of potential controversy, especially with everything they got going on with the women's division right now. But if they're cool with it, I don't have a problem with it as long as the Latina community doesn't. What did you think of this match and of that little weird thing with the name of her move? Exactly. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, the jacket and the helmet was right there off camera, and she threw it on while Raquel made her entrance, and she made her entrance with it. Yeah, that's part of her entrance gear. It was a good little match that put Raquel's power over. I like that for sure. All right, we'll go ahead and move on from there to it feels like the 18th Xavier Woods Butch match this month. But first, we would have another segment in the gorilla position. Caleb Braxton would interview Xavier Woods. I liked his Wolfpack-esque shirt. He says last week was the biggest win of Butch's career, but can he get it done by himself? He challenges Butch to a one-on-one match by himself and heads to the ring. Butch would then get himself psyched up by his Brawling Brutes teammates. We got a name for the team now. At Gorilla, he would actually slap Sheamus in the face, and then he would go out to the ring. And we'd have our match. We get a hot start. Woods would get the upper hand. Butch would come off with a stomp on his fingers after Woods was sliding back into the ring. Woods would get a roll-up with a quick kick out at one, who floats by Butch, who floats out of the pin and into a hammerlock on the mat. That would morph into a side headlock. Woods gets up to his feet. Woods with a rolling clothesline for a near fall. Woods gets Butch up in a fireman's carry, but Butch hooks his mouth and would get dropped, and then he would scissor kick Woods in the face. Some more kicks to the head with Woods hung up on the rope. Butch pounding on the back of Woods' head was kind of nasty and would nearly get him disqualified. The referee would have to pull him off. As he was getting pulled off, Woods would roll him up and get a quick 3 count. Butch, upset, would leave through the crowd. Woods would celebrate back on the stage, and behind him would appear Ridge and Sheamus. Woods would turn around to meet them, but Butch would come running back from ringside to attack Xavier Woods. And they would beat on him for a moment, and then we would leave with the Brawling Brutes standing over a fallen Xavier Woods. What did you think of this match? Well, we would come back from commercial break to a backstage interview with a beat up Woods, an angry Woods. He would say next week Kofi will be back, and he has someone in mind to tag with them for a 6-man tag next week against the Brawling Brutes. Any idea who this third man to join the New Day is? I saw you suddenly, oh yeah, and get excited. I don't, but I know what it is. And I'm yeah, time will certainly tell. All right, we will go ahead and move on from there. First we'll get that Michael Cole, Pat McAfee segment where they talk about Sasha and Naomi, that they're suspended, and that we're going to get a tournament for the Women's Tag Team Championships, and then from there we are on into the main event. I'll just run through it real quick here. What went down? Paul Heyman would be at the commentary table. A lot of back and forth. This is a great match. I'm going to skip over a lot of my notes here. Oh no, actually I'm not, because pretty early in the match, Jimmy would Riddle would go to whip Jimmy into the corner. Jimmy would reverse it. Riddle goes into the corner hard and comes down, and apparently legit bruised his hip here. And I even, in my notes as I'm watching it, not knowing that there was a legit injury, I would say, okay, boo. Jimmy reverses a whip into the corner, and Riddle hits hard. Jimmy stays on him with some punches to the head. Riddle seems legit hurt by the whip into the corner. Jimmy throws him into a chin lock. You can see the ref get in close and check on Riddle and then give some instructions to Jimmy. Riddle raises up but is thrown back down by Jimmy. Jimmy then goes back in to attack Riddle, but the ref stops him and throws up the cross arms X signal. The ringside doctor would then slide on into the ring to check on Riddle. The Orton would come into the ring to keep the Usos at bay, and we would cut to commercial break. So they certainly have used that symbol before as a work, but it still is the, as far as we know, the symbol for a legit injury, and that did seem pretty legit. We would come back from break. Riddle is continuing the match, so he does seem to be in pain, and he's on the mat a lot. He takes a double spine buster from the Usos, but again, with him hurt, it didn't look that smooth. Commentary is acknowledging the injury, saying the doctor is calling it a bruised hip. During the match, they're calling it a bruised hip, but Riddle is continuing the match. I say shoot or work? Question mark. Hard to tell, but if it's a work, Riddle is doing a good job of selling it. Heyman puts Riddle over for continuing the match. At commentary, Usos keep on the attack, getting great sympathy from Riddle. Work or shoot, it really worked for the match. Riddle getting sympathy, and he finally, Riddle would try to tag in Randy, but Jimmy hits a belly-to-belly, or a belly-to-back suplex, and would tag in Jay. Riddle would duck a clothesline, hits Jay with a knee. Jay would tag back in Jimmy, and we finally get our hot tag to Orton, who comes in as a house of fire, cleans house. He would hit those power slams that he likes to hit. He would hit the vintage Orton DDT on Jimmy, an RKO onto Jimmy, but the pin would be broke up by Jay. Jay would tag in, and then Riddle tags back in just before a super kick to Orton. Riddle hits an overhead kick. His overhead kick that he likes to do, splashes into the corner, goes for a splash on a downed Jay, but gets knees in his back, which couldn't have been good. And then a pop-up neck breaker would lead to a near fall. Riddle would kick out. Riddle goes up to the top, but is caught by Jay and lands on the mat, which had to kill that hip. Ref would come in. He would actually, after that bump, the ref would slide in real quick to Riddle to make sure he was okay. I caught that as well. Jay's on the top turnbuckle. Riddle would meet him up there and go for the super RKO, but is pushed off by Roman Reigns as Heyman is distracting the referee. And then we would get an Uso splash for the win. The Usos are the undisputed tag team champions. After the match, the Usos would double super kick Orton and beat on him a little bit as Reigns sets up the table. The announcer's table would throw Riddle on it, and then one of the Usos, I believe it was Jay. Back up. I believe it was Jay. Yeah, Jay would go up to the top turnbuckle and hit an Uso splash on Riddle, which also could not have felt good on that hip. And that would end. I liked that they cut away. They cut away to a lot of kids and a lot of fans crying and upset in the crowd. The show would end with Bloodline with 6 title belts held up in the air. What did you think of the end of SmackDown here in this match? That's the question, isn't it? Yeah. Right. Yeah, that image right there that we have up on the screen. That's how we ended SmackDown, and it was absolutely a fantastic image to go out on. Um, Ditto. Ditto. All right. We'll go ahead and move on from there over to the AEW shows. Now, I didn't get to watch these in the same detail that I watched Raw and SmackDown. I don't have cable, Raw and SmackDown, or Hulu. I gotta kind of use nefarious means or just go by the YouTube clips that AEW posts. So my notes aren't as my notes are not as intense and in depth for the AEW shows, but I did get to watch all of the first match of Dynamite this week, which was Samoa Joe versus the first Joker in the Owen Hart tournament quarterfinals match. That Joker would be the former Johnny Morrison, Johnny Nitro, Johnny Mundo, Johnny Elite now. They would go back and forth for a few minutes. Samoa Joe would take over with a back elbow to Johnny coming off the ropes. Some kicks to the head would put Johnny back in control. An awkward cartwheel clothesline as Joe just stood there. This was, look, I'll be honest. I like Samoa Joe. I like some of the stuff I've seen from Johnny Elite. This match was terrible. I'll let you know right now off the bat. This was horrible. So this spot here, Joe would be whipped into the ropes, but then he would just stop in front of the ropes and turn around and watch and stand there and watch as Johnny Elite did a cartwheel into a clothesline that Samoa Joe just let happen. Samoa Joe would end up out of the ring, selling the clothesline, and then Johnny Nitro, whatever, Johnny Elite, would take forever to get to the top turnbuckle, with Samoa Joe still kind of selling and trying not to look up to see when when Johnny's ready to jump, and then you would even very clearly see Johnny Elite. Now he's ready to jump, but he's telling Samoa Joe, nope, you got to move over a little bit more. Scoot over a little bit more. And then he would do some weird, terrible jump off the top turnbuckle. Still pretty much miss Samoa Joe. This was bad. I'm sorry. We would end up back in the ring. Joe would take back over with a big clothesline, atomic drop, a kick to the face, and then a senton splash for a near fall. Johnny would try to lift up Joe, but can't. Joe chops Johnny down for a near fall. Johnny would then roll through a muscle buster attempt into a Samoan drop and then a 450 splash, but would not get the 3. Johnny tries another flippy deal off the top rope onto Joe's knees, and that would lead into a muscle buster for the 3 count for Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe moves on in the Owen Hart tournament. So what did you think of this god-awful match? Yeah. To be fair, I think AEW's own Twitter account accidentally tagged Johnny Gargano instead of Johnny Elite in a post about who the Joker was as well. At least I saw a screen grab. I don't know if it was real, but I saw like a screen grab of that tweet. So hopefully it was real. That would be great. But yep. No. Well, these are two guys that have been around a while, but as far as I know, they've never met in the ring, right? So maybe, yeah, chemistry was definitely off. Yeah, for sure. None of that. Yeah. Hey. All right. All right. After the match, we would Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh would come out and blindside Samoa Joe with a steel pipe. Trent, Rocky Romero, and Chuck Taylor would come down and make the save. Uh, Anything you want to add to the little afterbirth there? Yeah. All right. After that, we would have a little backstage segment with the Hardys getting interviewed by Lexi Nair, but the Young Bucks would interrupt. Um, the Bucks were telling Jeff Hardy to take the night off because obviously he was injured after last week's match that we don't need to fight over again. Um, Jeff would say, "Hey, I got a tournament to win, y'all." Matt Hardy would threaten the Bucks, literally say, "Hey, this is a threat. If you interfere with Jeff's match tonight, Adam Cole won't be the only one getting his ass whooped." And then we would go to the next match. CM Punk would come out and join commentary. And then we would have Hangman Adam Page versus Takeshita. I always want to say Takeshita, but it's Takeshita. Takeshita, it was a decent little match here. Obviously, CM Punk, great on commentary, wearing his abortion shirt, his pro-choice shirt in Texas. I love that. Fans would chant, "This is awesome" during the match. CM Punk would say, "Hey, this is why I'm here. I'm scouting." Takeshita would have take a tombstone pile driver for a near fall at one point. Eventually, Hangman Page would hit the buckshot lariat and then would hit a GTS with CM Punk looking on for the 3. What did you think of this match? Yeah. Double or Nothing. Mm-hmm. Really? I won't disagree. Well, and that's what I was about to bring up because you said maybe he needs to go away. I'm like he did go away, but I think that interrupted what they were going with. And by the time he came back, then you had Punk and you had Bryan Danielson and you had some huge stars. Suddenly, he didn't feel like necessarily the main event guy, but they still went forward with putting the belt on him. Anyways, so I do feel like it's a little bit, too little, too late. Yeah. All right, we'll move on to the next match. We had Limitless Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland versus the Workhorsemen, JD Drake and Anthony Henry. This was a decent little tag team match with Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland looking strong. Um, Keith Lee, after the match, they would Ricky Starks or after the match, Keith Lee would say that, hey, we're now in the top 5 tag teams in AEW. Top 5 ranked. Of course, FTW champ Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs would interrupt Keith Lee. And Starks would say the fact that you two think you deserve a shot at the AEW Tag Team Championships with me and Hobbs standing right here is insane. Then the tag champs, Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus, along with Christian Cage, would come out. And Christian would say, Ricky, you need to learn when the hell to shut up. You're both worthy teams, but you're not the best. We're the best. And as the best, we're used to being challenged. But we're going to challenge both of you in a 3-way for the World Tag Team Championships at Double or Nothing. So, what did you think of this match? And then of the challenge to a 3-way tag team match at Double or Nothing? No. Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty much just managing the tag champs right now, and occasionally getting in 6-man tags with them, and that's about it. And Yeah, I certainly think they have an overbloated talent roster, partly because a lot of people became available and they were able to grab a lot of big stars. You can't blame them. Certainly a CM Punk, you got to grab that. You got to grab a Ryan Danielson. An Adam Cole, I think you grab. A few of the others, maybe, maybe not. Certainly, you can say this Christian Cage experiment has failed, but I think regardless, having that experience in the locker room for some of those younger guys to have around, I think could be invaluable and is certainly worth it, regardless of what he ends up doing on TV creatively. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next segment. It's time for Wardlow to honor his contract stipulations. If Wardlow can meet these sanctions set by MJF, Wardlow will finally get his chance to wrestle MJF at Double or Nothing. So MJF would come out with Sean Spears. He would say, Wardlow, if you lay so much as a finger on me during these 10 lashes, you don't get the match at Double or Nothing, and you don't sign a contract with AEW. Wardlow would come out in the handcuffs, escorted by security. MJF would spit at Wardlow as Wardlow got into the ring. Now, these lashes with the belt, I found it odd that they were just using a standard pant belt. And I'll tell you why. First off, it looks terrible, and it looks like Wardlow should be no selling it, which is what happened. He didn't sell it until the last couple. And it's not going to be terribly loud. You saw the marks, certainly. But if you use a big, thick belt, like a weight belt, it's going to make a smack. It's not going to actually hurt as much, and you'll still get the marks in the back, and it's going to be more impressive. So I don't like them using the small belt. This is like kind of wrestling 101 here. But it was what it was. I guess it kind of fits MJF's character using the pant belt, but if they used a bigger belt, I felt like it could have been more impressive. Hit Wardlow's no selling of it. Yeah. It wasn't bad, but it could be so much louder if you have a big thick belt that's landing right against the back. Yeah. And they did a good job of zooming in on the welts that were forming. He's just sitting there, and he's winking at girls in the audience, and he's flexing his pecs, and yeah. And I like the announcers. The announcers like, oh, this is definitely hurting. He's not giving MJF the satisfaction. I liked that they told that story that way. Of course, of course, MJF would end up kicking Wardlow in the balls, and they would beat down on Wardlow a bit here. Wardlow obviously helpless, being handcuffed. And Sean Spears would end up planting Wardlow with a C4, and then MJF would count to 3 as Sean Spears pinned Wardlow. But it looks like we got one more. We got a go-home show, and then we'll get the match between these two. Are you excited for that match? I am. And it's all because MJF is I think he might be the best wrestler in the world right now. Just from a pure, maybe not in the ring necessarily, but there's no one that's going to sell a ticket quicker, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And he's over. He's over as hell. Yeah. I don't think you do that. I think Punk and Page has to be your main event still. World title match, Punk, but this might have me more excited. And you know me, I'm the biggest Punk mark there is, and he's going for the world title. But this might be the match I'm most excited about on the Double or Nothing card. Falling a little flat right now. We got one more show or two more shows. We got Dynamite and Rampage next week before Double or Nothing. But yeah, so far pretty blah. All right, we'll move on to the next match. We had an Owen Hart Foundation quarterfinal match. Another one here: Ray Phoenix versus Kyle O'Reilly. Kyle O'Reilly would do the job here and make Ray Phoenix, Kyle O'Reilly would go over here and make Ray Phoenix tap out. Decent little match. What did you think of it? All right, then we had a confrontation with the Jericho Appreciation Society and the Blackpool Combat Club. Lots of back and forth here. I saw some of this on the YouTube clip, but not all of it. I liked the back and forth here. What did you think of this segment? What was that? I didn't mind that because that was sort of in response to the which I enjoyed, Jericho bringing up the old WWE segment of him pissing in Regal's tea that we all remember. But so I didn't mind that. It was a nice little thing. You call it WWE stuff, but that's wrestling. That's even old school wrestling. That's not WWE. Um, so I had no problem with that. I thought this was good. The Jericho Appreciation Society hasn't hooked me at all. This is now I'm like, all right, I can get into this a little bit. I think I'm enjoying what's happening here. All right, yeah, I was wondering where he was at. All right, Wheeler Yuta, we're talking about there. Okay, all right, but I did like. I mean, I don't care about the whole sports entertainment versus wrestling angle that they're taking with this, whatever. But I like these two groups and their chemistry together and where they're going, and that Jericho is gonna challenge him to a stadium stampede, and Mox is just like, no, fuck that. We're gonna have a fight. It's gonna be gang warfare. Call it whatever you want. Um, okay, I'm in. I mean, Mox sometimes is a little over the top with his violence, but I'm into that. That's cool. I'm down for that. Uh, of course, we would get teases that maybe everything in the Blackpool Combat Club, along with Eddie Kingston and the other people around there, aren't all working together. Particularly Brian Danielson and Eddie Kingston would get into a little bit of a shoving match, and they would have to be broke up. We'll move on from there on to the next match, a Owen Hart Foundation Women's quarterfinal match. Britt Baker DMD versus the Joker. The Joker was Maki Ito. Of course, Maki Ito, who I'm not the biggest fan of with some of that Japanese stuff, but I know she's very popular. Uh, Britt Baker would get the win here. What'd you think of this match? Yeah. All right, and so it'll be Britt Baker versus Tony Storm. If I'm not mistaken, Tony Storm kind of came out onto the stage at the end of the match. Tony Storm kind of looking like an early '90s glam rock porn star. I know you're having visions in your head playing right now. We'll go ahead and move on from that. And we had Tony Schiavone in the ring, but she would be interrupted by Serena Deeb. And I liked this. I thought this was interesting. Deeb would be out here saying she was sick of hearing Tony Schiavone talk. I heard what you said last week. You said that I couldn't beat Thunder Rosa. Congratulations, Tony. After all your years in the business, in one short interview, you made yourself look like a complete idiot. She would then call out Dustin Rhodes for saying something similar. Um, she said, I respected you, Dustin, but you were Thunder Rosa's coach. Dustin, you know my trials and tribulations. Why did you say I couldn't beat Thunder Rosa? You don't have the balls to answer to me. And when I beat Thunder Rosa and become AEW Women's Champion, you will respect me. D would then slap Dustin Rhodes, who'd get turned around by the slap. Thunder Rosa would be running down to the ring, and Dustin would keep Thunder Rosa off of Deeb. What did you think of this little segment? worked shoot kind of, hinting at things that you don't. If you're not someone who knows it, you don't need to know it. But if you know it, it adds that little flavor. Yeah.
which kind of like turns me off from it because, I mean, let's be honest here. If something like that happens, people need to be held accountable and you need to fucking call them out. Let's not be coy about something and just be dancing around it or making hits or something. The point of it being is though is if there is one women's wrestler that deserves to be world champion at a company, it's Serena Deeb.
100%. It's not going to happen here, unfortunately, but 100%.
After the bullshit she went through with the straight edge society, with the shaving of the head, fuck. Everything she went through on the indies to this back. Badass bitch doesn't begin to describe Serena Deeb in a nutshell. Unfortunately, I think you're right. I don't think it's going to take it off Thunder Rosa anytime soon. But
Which, I mean, they're not doing anything with Thunder Rosa. Britt Baker, they pushed hard. She was on TV every week. She was out there healing it up. Thunder Rosa's barely been around since she's won the championship, and that's
correct me if I'm wrong. Does she still have her deal with NWA?
I am not sure. I don't know.
Because I think she might still have her deal with NWA that's preventing. Which if that's
Then why put the belt on her?
why put the belt? I'm not saying we're right or wrong because I know she saw her contract in All Elite Wrestling as well. But then again, like there's so many variables with this that it's just fucking frustrating. I want Serena Deeb to fucking pull this through. We all know it's gonna be Thunder Rosa, but yeah, whatever.
Who knows? Maybe they can pull one over on us, and we'll see Serena Deeb win the championship. I would actually like that. I would be all for that. As much as I like Thunder Rosa, they haven't been using her, so wouldn't that be something? All right, we would move on from that into another Owen Hart Foundation quarterfinal match: Adam Cole versus Jeff Hardy. Man, every time I see Adam Cole, I just look. You put me and Adam Cole next to each other. Adam Cole looks fantastic, but in the world of wrestling, it's just every time I see him, he looks like a kid out there. I'm sorry. I know that's not the most popular thing to say, but he looks tiny. Right. But what did you think of this match between Jeff and Adam Cole? Adam Cole would win, go over.
Let me just jump right in on my more hatred for AEW fucking bandwagon. This is a perfect example of something that killed WCW. Make sure you have the allotted fucking time to tell the story you're trying to tell in the main event. Instead of trying to rush it, have TV go off fucking air, not knowing, not getting through what it's supposed to go through. So now we're gonna fucking run through all this bullshit, most likely ending in double or nothing. Well, here's what happened when Dynamite went down. Fuck you. Should have been enough time for the she ran tight. This is a story that they just had to do in our qualifying tournament, but it had to do with the Undisputed Elite and Bullet Club and the Hardys and so many other teams that were fucking involved in whatever's going on. Sting and Darby Allin. And because of your stupid decision making with the timing, you didn't have the time to tell the full story you were trying to tell. And you couldn't improvise something enough to actually make it decent.
Yeah.
Dude, that's fucking ruthless bullshit. And another reason why I said last week, AEW is beginning with the one. The best, most memorable part of the entire thing was Sting no-selling Jeff to Kyle O'Reilly and Kyle O'Reilly taking an unprotected one to the head from Sting. The way he acted with that was just hilarious to me. But outside of that, I have nothing more to say about it.
The thing that it got a laugh out of me, not in a good way. After the match, the Bucks would come out, obviously. They would all attack the Hardys. Darby Allin would come out, be in the ring before the camera could even catch him, right? And be, but the numbers would be against him. Eventually, he get hit. Ed Sting's just sitting there, walking to the ring, taking his time. I'm like, Sting, a little urgency here. Come on, buddy. But then he gets to the ring, and then of course they botch kind of the double super kick on him. It hit his shoulders, and he kind of crumpled down. But yeah, I'm with you. Everything felt a little rushed here at the end, and I wasn't the biggest fan of it. But all right, hopefully, the go home shows for Dynamite and Rampage heading into Double or Nothing really ramps things up, and we can get excited about that whole card. Because so far, there's 1.5 matches that I'm excited for. Well, no, I take that back. I'm excited for Thunder Rose and Deep just because I love Deep. But all right, we'll go ahead and move on to Rampage, and we're running really long here, so we got to run through this pretty quickly. We'll start off with a trios match: the House of Black versus Fuego del Sol and the Dark Order. Anything interesting about this match? Oscura, yeah. Yeah. Right. All right. Sean Spears versus Big Damo would be next. Spears would deliver the C4 and get the win here, and then have a little promo afterwards. Anything interesting you want to talk about here? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next match. We had an Owen Hart Foundation, the last quarterfinal match for the women's side of the tournament. Chris Statlander versus the baddie Red Velvet. Jade Cargill, Kira Hogan, and Smart Mark Sterling were sitting at ringside, and Ruby Soho was on commentary. Chris Statlander would go over, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, she would go over Red Velvet here. But then, of course, the baddies would come in and attack Statlander from behind. Ruby Soho came in, and I like the prospect of Ruby Soho and Jade Cargill having a little feud here. That intrigues me. What do you think of this match and of that little afterbirth? Really? That could really put Jade over. That would be the next big step for Jade, I think. Would
Official 39-0. What hers a fucking victory. We're getting close.
All right, we'll have up next. We had Scorpio Sky come out demanding the return of his stolen TNT Championship title. Sammy and Tay Conti would appear on the screen outside the arena. They would have a sledgehammer and they would destroy the TNT Championship belt. Frankie Kazarian would join in on that, taking a few shots at the belt himself. What did you think of this segment?
Scorpio Sky had the TNT championship on his fucking shoulder. Why do you need to say goddamn thing? And then anytime they let me get on this and fucking be able to belt the sledgehammer too, like, bro, you had a match coming up with a different fucking promotion to celebrate being the future of the industry. Like you're focusing on what belted fucking icon needs and bar of fucked on. Get out of here. The whole thing pissed me off. I was really fucking relentlessly watching the whole thing. Good reason.
All right, backstage, Jade Cargill will announce that she's going to defend her championship, her TBS championship, at Double or Nothing against Anna Jay. Looking forward to that match at all?
I am, but
I think you've got a. I think a few too many of these women hold a special place in your heart.
the one and only female member of the Dark Order and handpicked by Mr. Brody Lee himself. She's not getting the credit for it.
All right, we'll move on to the main event: the Blackpool Combat Club, Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley versus Dante Martin and Matt Sydal. What do you think of this match here? I'm sure the Blackpool Combat Club would go over. Yep, Moxley spiked Dante with a pile driver. No. Yep. Paradigm shift. Yep, for the win.
So, here's my thing about it. I know they want him to be a tag team wrestler. Unfortunately, his brother couldn't stay healthy. This is like, however, Dante Martin has proven time and time again that he is one hell of a singles competitor.
Mm-hmm.
The way they've been growing Dante Martin with his bullshit tag teams, he's going through the same issues with the request for AEW that we were complaining about WWE. I don't get Matt Sydal. I think his shit was class. Well, I mean, let's face it. Let's just get through what happened in this match because it was a bullshit match that just needed something to end the fucking night with. Let's get to the real news of this and the fucking scene that happened with Daniel Bryan after. Holy fuck.
After Rampage went off the air, yeah. And I don't know if you saw the actual official video that AEW released after Rampage went off the air, after Rampage aired. But yeah, Danielson's leg would get caught between the ramp and the ring, and I think that was a shoot. But you can see right at the very beginning of the footage that AEW released, the official footage, Danielson's stuck there, but he's got the referee's ear, and he's telling the referee something, and then he starts selling like he's in pain, and other people are, and I think he was legit stuck, but I think everything around it, I think Danielson's fine, I think everything around it, him selling the pain and how much pain he's in, and everyone's sort of, but not really being in a panic to get him out. I think that was a little bit more of a work, the way he limped off and then, gave Eddie Kingston the finger. I think that was all, Bryan Danielson just using this situation to the benefit of the story.
At the same time, all I can figure out.
But I think he was legitimately stuck. I don't think that was on purpose. I think he legitimately got stuck. And you can see the fan footage, you see a bunch of them trying to push the ring back. And that's when he gets released. But in the actual official AEW footage, you can see that they do push the ring just like a couple of inches, but that's enough to release. You do see the ring actually move, and that gets his foot out of there. Yeah. I don't think he is, but I think we would have heard something by now. But we'll know for sure. I guess we'll know more for sure on Dynamite. But I think if he was legit hurt in some way from this, we would have heard something about it. All right, that'll do it for this week in wrestling TV. Anything you want to add other than apparently AEW sucked and SmackDown was meh and Raw was okay? All right, we only got one other main topic to go through, and then a few quick jabs. We try to run through them quick. Hopefully, we can still come in under 3 hours. We're coming in pretty quick here. So Stephanie McMahon is going to take a leave of absence. The chief branding officer of the WWE would go to her Twitter page and make the following tweet. As of tomorrow, I am taking a leave of absence from the majority of my responsibilities at WWE. WWE is a lifelong legacy for me, and I look forward to returning to the company that I love after taking this time to focus on my family. What do you think of this news of Steph taking a leave of absence? Yeah. Especially when your father's a machine who's seemingly never taken a vacation in his life. You know, he works until 3 in the morning and then is back in the office at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's all. 100%. She's taken a couple of quick leaves. Obviously, the birth of her kids, and then way back, at her wedding, at her and Paul's wedding. Other than that, she's been there every day. She was the lead of creative, and then she's been the chief brand officer, which is a heck of a job because she's got to be everywhere. She's the public face of the company. So anytime they do some promotion somewhere, she's got to be there. She's constantly flying around and doing things. There is a report that Nick Khan's going to take on some of her duties, which that I'm sure is true. The idea that he's politically trying to take over, I that's nonsense. But yeah, well deserved, and hopefully it doesn't mean that something's wrong. Hopefully it's just she needs a break and she's taking it. Especially now that Tripper that Triple H is apparently coming back full time to his duties. So right.
You know, and as far as I guess it's fly on your a few weeks now.
I think he made the press circuit that he was doing with the interviews, the big interview with Stephen A. Smith, and I think shortly after that he started coming back full time, or at least slowly more and more would be my guess. And now that he's back full time, I think Stephanie just went, okay, now it's I'm going to take some time off and spend some time with my kids, you know.
I do. If this conspiracy theory is a con trying to fashion himself as political power, I would like to point out that he's picking out the wrong members of this circle. Please make something tragic happen. That's not his name. Oh God.
Butch,
What?
Butch.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm just going to let you suffer.
Moving on.
No, the head of production, and his name's escaping me now because I'm trying to remember it. But
I just know everyone calls him Kevin Dunn.
Kevin Dunn, yes. Yeah, I think certainly if you take certainly what Mock said about him in his book, Kevin Dunn's he's got a lot of power and he's not afraid to use it apparently, for political purposes and to bury people he doesn't like. Certainly, I think Kevin Dunn is great at at the technical side of what he does and the way he presents WWE. Though I would argue it's gotten stale over the last 30 years and probably needs a little bit of a switch up and a change up. Beyond new set, new graphics, woo! But yeah. Going back to this story, hopefully Stephanie McMahon. Hopefully this is all well and good. She just wants to spend some more time at home with her kids and with her family. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to quick jabs. Only a couple of quick stories I want to fly through here. The first one being Money in the Bank. Obviously, that commercial continued to run. That with the apparent stipulation for Money in the Bank that the winner will get a title shot at WrestleMania. Even though, according to The Observer, people within WWE Creative, including some higher ups, have been told that things will be going as they always are. Money in the Bank stipulation is not changing, and the Royal Rumble stipulation is not changing. Yet they're continuing to air this commercial unedited, and it's making them confused. It's still some confusion internally about what's going to happen there. There is some thought that Vince, because Money in the Bank is a stadium show, that it's just Vince kind of throwing that line in, because apparently it was Vince that threw that line in when they were filming. And of course now we're getting into a little more speculation and hearsay, but the thought is he threw that line in because, hey, I've got to sell a stadium show, I got to sell those tickets, and maybe this little extra line can help sell a few extra tickets. Or as now we're getting into false advertising here. Should we go back to the beginning of the show and go back to that topic? So what are your thoughts on this news here? Right. Well, I think that's always Meltzer's thing, and a lot of the old school dirt sheet writers, they, they have their sources within the company, but a lot of times, especially in wrestling, these people have an agenda, and they're telling you something they want you to report for a reason, and it may not always be the most truthful thing they're telling you. And of course, you're not these guys. Meltzer's not a real journalist. He can take whatever he wants and put it in his newsletter. If he's getting told something from just one person and he's not bothering to verify it with any of his other sources, it's meaningless. But it's getting put out there. It's getting put out there. So that's why when you want to listen more to like a Sean Ross Sapp or some of these other people that are more on the legit side of covering wrestling and the journalism, where they're going to have multiple sources and they're going to try and feel their way through different people's agendas before they throw something, just a piece of information out there. All right, we'll move on to the next quick jab here. We talked a little bit about this last week, but it is now confirmed that Ric Flair will have a final match at StarCast before SummerSlam, or that's taking place around SummerSlam weekend. Of course, StarCast is promoted by his son-in-law, Conrad Thompson. It's also being promoted by David Crockett, and they're even bringing back the Jim Crockett Promotions banner for this match, which is kind of fun. But there's no word yet on his opponent or who the match will be against or how it will happen. There have been rumors that, hey, they're looking into a tag team match, or that it might be against Steamboat, but Steamboat says, no, I won't do it. There's also an old WCW announcer that's Chris Cruz, who's actually petitioning the Maryland athletic board to block the match from happening because of Rick's age. And Conrad Thompson here in an interview or in a conversation with WrestlingInc.com, he's got some quotes here. He said, I know that Rick, if he was asked this question, would probably be combative, but I understand that it comes from a good place. It comes from a place of concern and love. I mean, everybody wants to see our favorite legends and heroes live forever and do what they do forever. We all have different ideas of what that is, but at the end of the day, this is Rick's decision. More importantly than that, he is my father-in-law, so we have had a lot of conversations about that. He has been cleared by his doctor. He is good to go. He has been training at a high level for a long time. He is really, really proud of his cardio. We actually recorded his podcast earlier today, and he was bragging about how many squats he can do and how long and how many he can do the rowing machine. He went on to say he went through a whole battery of tests and got a rating, and the doctor said you're good to go. So if his doctor approves it and Rick approves it, and it's something Rick wants to do, I feel like we go with that rather than, no offense, a commentator he probably hasn't talked to in 30 years. I'm not upset that Mr. Cruz has concerns. I know there's a whole contingent of internet fans that don't like Mr. Cruz, but if he's trying to make wrestling a better, safer place and take care of those folks that we grew up watching and loving, I think that's great. But at the same time, I think he probably doesn't have all the information. So a lot of these quotes here were in response to Chris Cruz's comments and attempts to get the Maryland State athletic board to block the match. What do you think of this match? Do you think it's a good idea? Ric Flair at 73 years of age and some of the health issues he's had recently. We talked about this a little bit more, but now it's kind of a real thing. We still don't know who he's going up against, though. I didn't recognize the name Gypsy Joe until you mentioned New Jack. I'm like, oh wait a minute, I think I do know that story. Yeah, that's ooh. But yeah, look. At the end of the day, we can all have our opinions on it. I would not promote this match, me personally, but Conrad is his son-in-law. So he knows where Rick's at health-wise better than just about anyone. He has apparently gotten cleared by the doctor. He's been working hard. If Rick wants to do it, and Conrad is comfortable promoting it, and, all the insurance issues you got to do with and putting on a show like that all gets cleared and works out okay, then who am I to say no? Go ahead. Throw on the show. It's gonna get eyeballs for sure, and it's gonna draw, but it's also a risk, and that's why I personally wouldn't run it because of the liability risk. But yeah, I think that's likely. I think that's likely where it's going to be as a tag team match. I really hope so. All right, we'll move on to the last quick jab here. Something really interesting. Kevin Nash is starting a podcast. It's going to be hosted by kayfabe commentaries Sean Oliver. This is really exciting news here. I love Kevin Nash. I love a lot of his shoot interviews, especially with Sean Oliver and kayfabe commentaries. What do you think of this match here? And of course, what you're seeing there is a little video that they're going to be at StarCast as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. If you're somehow watching our show and you've never watched Sean Oliver at kayfabe commentaries or any of his stuff, go look for it on. There are lots of clips on YouTube, little clips here and there, but also they are starting to release because a lot of these interviews are now older. Sean Oliver is starting to release the long form versions, the full interviews on YouTube for free, so you're able to watch a lot of this stuff. He's currently releasing stuff. Including there was a Kevin Nash one the other day. He just released one the other day with Vince Russo. So, and there are all kinds of great interviews with kayfabe commentaries. Definitely check that out. Look them up on YouTube. All right, that'll do it for today's episode of the Buckle Bomb Show. It is our longest one yet. We are 55 seconds away from hitting 3 hours. So, longest one yet. We had a lot to talk about today. Any last words, Tony? Absolutely. Make sure to comment down below. Let us know what you think of Sasha and Naomi, everything going on with there. Let us know what you thought of this week's AEW shows and WWE shows, and what you think of Stephanie McMahon. Let us know what you think. We want to have a conversation. And also, please like and subscribe. We'll see you guys later.
Always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, bitch, hand me the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean, and I bring it to the mad light, ain't got time.